should be doing. The decline of European civilization will only be stopped if we recover our moral force, the dignity which meant that the whole world esteemed us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now for the ECR group, I call Mr. Kamall.
Last week, Donald Tusk gave a very clear message to potential irregular migrants when he said, "Do not come to Europe, do not believe smugglers." Finally, a European leader trying to break the link between getting on a boat and bypassing legal migration channels. Because stemming the flow of irregular migrants will allow our countries to focus on helping the refugees who need and deserve our help directly from the conflict zones. But let us be clear, our enemies are not the refugees who are fleeing from war, conflict and persecution. Our enemies are not the irregular migrants who come from safer countries and who may use the conflict to understandably seek a better life in our countries. Our enemies are the people traffickers who prey on innocent and desperate people, who care little for the lives of their human cargo and who deserve to be taken out of action. So on Monday, EU leaders agreed the outline of an agreement with the Turkish government. And I hoped, like Gianni, to be standing here today welcoming a deal. But instead, I have to admit, I have a number of reservations and questions. Firstly, the process. Yet again, we see one or two leaders going off to negotiate with Turkey on behalf of the EU without really consulting the other countries. Secondly, I struggle to see how much of this is either legal or practical. Even in desperate times, should we just tear up our own rules and international conventions? And thirdly, I am very concerned that we are replacing one series of pressures from economic migration with another by granting Turkey visa liberalisation in a matter of weeks, without thinking through the implications. And fourthly, how will the €6 billion be delivered? Will it be tied to clear targets that must be met? Or otherwise, would we not be better off and safer spending that vast sum of money here on reception, processing and returns? And Turkey itself is testing the EU. Those of us who believe in freedom of the press should be concerned about the actions of the Turkish government against the Zaman newspaper. But if we are to work with Turkey on migration as friends, then as friends we should also be honest with them about whether EU membership is realistic and with our concerns over freedoms in their country. Whatever our views, we must all realise that we will not begin to control this crisis until we all realise there is no one silver bullet to solve this crisis. We made that mistake last year with the relocation scheme. Let's not make that same mistake again. And while we may not be able to stop the flows altogether, we can show that our borders are not a free-for-all. In the short term, we can work on finalising readmission agreements and speeding up returns. We can fingerprint upon arrival and find resources to speed up the processing of applications. We can put NATO ships in the Aegean to target the traffickers. In the long run, we can talk about reform of Dublin. But should we really be reinventing Dublin in the midst of a crisis? Or should we find a way of making the system we have work effectively and helping those facing the greatest pressures? Dublin has failed because countries stopped implementing it. Yes, Greece does have a significant humanitarian crisis, but EU politicians would be making a huge mistake to try and launch a hostile takeover of Greece under Article 78 of the treaty, as I see some politicians are proposing. Guy, I see you looking at me. I imagine you're going to attack me again this week. There are a number of times you mentioned Mr Kamall in your speeches. Really is flattering. I just hope for your partner's sake you don't mention my name in your sleep. But on an issue as important as this, I ask you and others here today not to seek to score cheap political points, but to agree how all of us can work together to find effective answers. Not undeliverable silver bullets, not initiatives designed purely to grab the headlines, but practical solutions to save lives and help refugees. Because we owe it to our citizens and the refugees that desperately need our help, to stem the flow of those who are not refugees, to help frontline states take responsibility, and to provide a refuge for those genuinely fleeing for their lives.
Herr Kamall.
Mr. Kamall. Mr. Etheridge has a question for you. Would you be happy to take it?
I'm happy, yes.
Nee, es haben sich praktisch alle
In fact, almost all UKIP members have asked to seize this moment, but I can only take one. I can only pick one. I'll pick Mr. Etheridge. He was the first to ask for this opportunity. So there you go. Mr. Etheridge, go ahead.
Thank you, sir, for choosing me. I appreciate that everyone's keen to talk to Mr. Kamall. And last time we spoke, Mr. Kamall, I had the honour of asking you a question about Turkey, and you contradicted the position that your leader, the Prime Minister, has held for many years about Turkish membership of the EU. I wonder if now you'd like to join with me in condemning your leader, the Prime Minister's part in a very shoddy deal that's been done with Turkey, the payment of protection money, basically on his knees with the rest of the EU, begging Turkey to solve the problems we've got. And while we're at it, give us a critique of his other failed renegotiations. Any that might come to mind?
Mr. Etheridge, you're either naive or a real optimist if you expect me to stand here and criticise the leader of my party, the Prime Minister of my country. I would say wake up or get some coffee before you come into the chamber. But what I would say to you, you also criticised him over the negotiation. No Prime Minister has done more to negotiate a different relationship with the EU than this current Prime Minister, and for that you should give him credit.
Schön.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I now call the next speaker on behalf of the Liberal Group, Mr. Verhofstadt.
Chairman, so I have understand that it's forbidden that I look to Mr. Kamall. In any way I'm going to surprise Mr. Kamall because essentially, Mr. Kamall, I am in agreement with the critical points you have made on the proposal that is on the table. I don't deny that we need practical and technical arrangement, Mr. Weber, with Turkey as a part of a global approach. But it is not a practical or technical arrangement. It is a deal with Turkey in which we outsource our problems, in a deal in which we are giving, in fact, the entrance keys, the keys to the gates of Europe in the hands of Turkey, of the successors of the Ottoman Empire, to Erdogan. I should even say maybe to Sultan Erdogan. He shall now decide on the entrance in the European Union. Because what is the deal, in fact? The deal is that we are blocking, collectively, the entrance to the European Union for Syrians and for other people, and it is Turkey on an individual basis who shall decide who is the refugee who can enter, in a trade-off, one-to-one. Some Syrians shall maybe enter, but for example, Afghani who are fleeing for IS in Afghanistan, no. And a Kurd who want to leave Iraq or maybe another country shall certainly not be allowed to enter in that scheme. So I have to tell you, I am on the same side as Mr. Kamall. For once, I should say, I find this deal hugely problematic. Problematic because it's a type of collective refoulement, what we are doing. Collective refoulement, and in my eyes, this is forbidden. This is forbidden by the Convention of Geneva. Moreover, you have to know, dear colleagues, that Turkey is a very poor member of the Geneva Convention. They have not ratified a number of protocols. One example, Turkey doesn't give political asylum.
Thousands of Iraqians, Libyans, Afghans who won't be covered by the EU agreement with Turkey. Secondly, we shouldn't make a mistake here. The assistance provided by Turkey is of a humanitarian aid, and we can't trade that off with allowing Turkey to enter the European Union, particularly as it doesn't respect human rights. In other words, we need to continue to shoulder our political and moral responsibilities. We need to provide assistance to refugees. That doesn't mean going down on our knees to an authoritarian state that doesn't comply with human rights that are elementary in nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Terry Cabras. Now for 3 minutes we have Mr. Farage. We're embarked upon a course of almost unbelievable stupidity. The historic error made by Chancellor Merkel last year by saying all can come has led directly to this mess. And now we're being blackmailed by Turkey. First they came for £3 billion in a promise to reduce the numbers coming in to Greece and the rest of Europe. And of course, when the numbers increased many-fold, they came back for another £3 billion. And they will keep on coming back for more and more and more. As the British poet Rudyard Kipling observed of the Danish incursions into England. And that is called paying the Danegeld. But we proved it again and again that if once you have paid him the Danegeld, you'll never get rid of a Dane. And now they've got us over a barrel. This new deal, where for every one illegal migrant we send back, if our human rights laws allow it, they'll send us another one back from Syria. So the argument is, we paid them a fortune not to reduce numbers, and yet we've given in and we've said visa-free access for 75 million Turks from June of this year. In theory, they can stay for 90 days. In practice, many will disappear or, of course, claim family reunion. The numbers will go sharply, sharply up. And in return for all of this, we're now going to fast-track Turkey as a full member of the European Union. My goodness me, I wish that David Cameron was as good at negotiations as the Turks are. So we're going to go into political union with a country that's got borders with Iraq, Iran and Syria. We're going to go into political union with a country that is poorer than anybody else in the European Union and give free movement for 75 people, and join up with a government that is increasingly Islamist and authoritarian. The Turkish Prime Minister said this week, Turkish membership will be a turning point. Too right. The British Prime Minister has long supported Turkey being a member of this union. In fact, he's fought hard over 10 years for them to join. He doesn't bat an eyelid at the extra £500 million we will stump up to help fund this crisis. Well, this referendum in Britain is all about what is the safest option. And given that the boss of Europol says already there are 3,000 to 5,000 Islamist terrorists that have come into Europe using the migrant routes, it's pretty clear to me that a vote to remain is a vote for Turkey. A vote to remain is a vote for massively increased immigration into Britain, and a vote to remain is a vote that makes Britain more vulnerable to terrorism. Safer to vote to leave and take back control of our borders. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Farage. Now for 1 minute 30, Mr. De Graaf.
Voorzitter.
President. Shame on you, is what we've heard. Monday, complete capitulation to the Turkish dictator Erdogan. You are betraying our values in Europe. You are stampeding over our values. You're putting our freedom up for grabs. It is very clear. The